Welcome to Rule the World, the art and power of storytelling. Storytelling is what connects us as humans, and for brands, it is no different. A well-told story can effectively position your brand in the minds and hearts of your audience, and can convert thoughts and feelings into results and revenue. On this show, we dive into the unique and recurring principles of world-class storytellers from every walk of life to help you level up your storytelling skills and knowledge to drive real, measurable results for you and your organisation. Here's your host, Paul Furlong.
Well, hello and welcome to Rule the World, the art and power of storytelling. My name is Paul Furlong, Creative Director at Opus Media, and I imagine you're listening to this podcast because you know the power of storytelling. And I want you to bring that power to your own writing with Roger Shulman at thewritercoach.com. Roger's unique coaching method connects your personal story to whatever you're writing, giving it heart and depth. The result, your presentation, website copy, keynote address or screenplay becomes compelling, entertaining and persuasive. Roger is the winner of a British Academy Award and nominee for the Oscar and the Emmy. So go to thewritercoach.com and schedule a free discovery session. Let Roger bring the Hollywood to your writing. Today's guest is Finbar Healy, the world's finest comedian, known to only those in Newcastle and the surrounding areas, and sometimes not even there. He's also an actor who can't sing, a dancer who can't dance, and a voiceover artist as long as a northeast accent is required, as other accents aren't available. Finn, I can't believe you made me read that out, but welcome to the show.
The reason I made you read it, Paul, is because what I know of you so far is that there was two men talking in a car park and one of them looked bored out of his mind. You would be the other one. So I thought it might be best to just give you something notable about myself, you know.
Well, thank you very much for that. So why don't you tell us a little bit more about yourself, and maybe be a little less self-deprecating?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, I've never said anything positive about myself, but whoever does, you know, it doesn't mean we're not positive and upbeat anyway. You know, that's the art of storytelling about oneself, is it has to be negative in regards to oneself, and then everyone else gets a positive. That's why I do what I do. So I'm a comedian. Predominantly, I work on the after-dinner circuit. I also grace plenty of the theatre stages around the UK. I love what I do. That's resulted in me becoming an actor, which is what I always wanted to do initially. The reason I became a comedian was because my dad was a comedian, and I'm one of four. And my two brothers were fantastic musicians, and my dad was a musician as well as a comedian. So obviously he had the actor and comedian what can sing, and I'm the actor and comedian what can't sing element. So because my brothers were fantastic musicians, I had to do something to remain my dad's favourite. So what I did was become a comedian. So that's why I did that, and because I absolutely love it. I like to possess things in life. Whenever I say I can pay my bills, etc., I like to say that laughter paid for them. You know, that's a wonderful thing to be able to say about what you do. The acting I absolutely love, although I seem to have been generally typecast at present. The last few roles I've done, I've donned a dress. It always seems to be a phone call. Finbar, I've got a wonderful job for you. Here's the breakdown of what's about to happen. And by the way, you'll be wearing a dress and a wig. Well, thank you very much. That seems to be my thing. I'm a bit of a dame. So I do pantomime on an annual basis as well. Last year I was at Gateshead Stadium up in the northeast. And previous to that I was at Concert Empire. And that's a little bit about me, really. The voiceover artist thing's probably a fabrication unless someone wants to hire me to do so, you know.
Brilliant, thank you for that. Although the film that we did together, I don't think I dressed you up in a dress.
That's a good point. Luckily I wasn't. That time, that was one of my only times on screen and stage as a man, which was really welcome feeling.
I'm glad. So, how did you learn to tell stories?
You see, that within itself is a difficult conversation, Paul, because it's got to be in a certain context. So, for example, I always knew I had an ability for storytelling from the tender age of being a child. I always stood up and would tell stories through the medium of song, even though, as you heard earlier, I can't sing, so that was a bit unbearable for my family at family parties. But also, I've always been a keen reader, and getting lost into novels, I do believe that getting lost into words is more powerful than anything could ever be. So, for example, if I read a script for a piece of work that somebody's asking me to do, I get so lost in the script that it paints the pictures. The words paint the picture. I shut my eyes and see it before. But that always makes me a tricky customer, because then I have this vision of what the words are. So whenever the director's vision is different, I'm always like, oh, I saw it so differently. I'm so disappointed now. But so storytelling has been a part of my life forever. And, you know, with the speaking and listening tasks in English, I was unfortunate enough that I didn't go to a school that had drama, which is a huge shame for me, because it's always been the biggest cornerstone in my life. So the best I had was speaking and listening and linguistics at school, and I always exceeded myself in that, whether it be because grammatically I couldn't put what was in my head onto the paper, but I could always act out a story better than I could write one myself. Because I do that, I get wonderful ideas, and then I go, I must write that down. As soon as I go to write it down, I go, that looks nothing like what I've just seen. So I don't know whether you can say I'm kind of a fantasy storyteller, where I draw all the words in my head, but that would be my best association as to how it works. I'd like to have a muse who follows me around with a pen and paper, so I can just spurt out all of my feelings all of the time, and they can write my story. But no one would read it anyway, unless we're in Newcastle or the surrounding areas, or even if they knew me there anyway.
So when you're putting your stories together, be it a story that you're maybe going to act out and you're planning how you're going to portray it, or the stories that you're telling from stage when you're performing your stand-up, what ingredients do you make sure are included within that story?
There's no key ingredients. The main ingredient that I like to refer to is self-association. So when it comes to the idea of writing a joke, or even to reword something that I previously looked at, I'll always say, for example, I've experienced a situation in life which I then want to turn into a joke. I've even heard it from a friend, a situation that then I see great bones in for hilarity. I'll still associate it to myself, because people find it a lot easier to laugh at the comedian who stood in front of them than somebody else who they don't know who you're referring to in the story. So I always like to make it about myself where possible. I mean, if I'm telling a joke about two priests in Ireland, I can't really refer to myself, because I'm stood on a stage in front of people, and they know I'm not a priest because I haven't got the collar on. So yeah, key ingredient, self-association. I know that sounds mad, and it sounds self-absorbed, but it's not. It's actually in light of humour, I think, to refer to yourself. So for example, that works with everything. If you were selling something, it works with selling something. If you tell stories that you've heard that might be relatable to a client, for example, that you were dealing with, if you made that story about yourself, it would make it a lot more relatable than if you go, oh, I had this friend what this happened to. Then that's not as relatable as somebody. I also think there just has to be a lot of substance in there that draws you in. A lot, you know, something that it captures interest. It can't just be a flat. The punchline's irrelevant if the story is right. That's how I feel. I feel if the story grips you, then the punchline of the story, even if it doesn't have a punchline, if it's not a joke, for example, I'm referring to it such as a joke, but I think the story has to be gripping from start to finish, regardless of the outcome. Because if you've lost people 3 minutes in and it's 7 minutes, then it's going to be a long time.
So how do you grab people at the beginning of the story? What is it that you use to kind of grab them at the start, and how do you hold their attention throughout the story?
Usually a swear word or two. No, I'm only trying. That's not true. I think the way I would grip somebody in is to create a picture in the first instance. I think to create a picture as to what you're leading to, then it's almost like you've created a synopsis of what you're about to say with the interesting bits. So start with the interest, and then you've got to kind of associate that in later on, but you can tail off as long as the interest is there at first. It's hard when you're not putting it to context to answer, that's the only thing. When I'm not putting a context in, if you gave me a scenario, I would try and portray it to you, but equally without a scenario, well, with a scenario, I probably couldn't do it anyway, so I don't know why I'm saying it.
Fair enough. And so maybe this is difficult to portray without a scenario as well, but once you've got kind of your key ingredients, you've got the picture of what you're trying to paint in the mind of the listeners, and you've got the kind of the different context that you're trying to get in to the story. Is there a way that you structure your story?
Yeah. Well, the start, and then you go to the middle, and then after the middle, you go straight to the end. It works every time, Paul. Works every time.
Thank you.
No, so it's as I say, it's really hard without context as to how to formulate a story. So, say for example, I want to talk of my experience of going to the pub in COVID-19. So when the pubs are freshly open, and the context is completely different, and also the situation we're putting ourselves in is not the same. So I would always try and paint a picture of what happened if I was to tell this story to you, for example. So I would say, I'd asked my wife permission. She said no, but I decided to go anyway. So off I go on my way to the pub in a taxi with a cellophane curtain in the front. I'm speaking to the man and he can't hear a word I'm saying because I've got a mask on and there's sellotape? I've gone wrong there already. You see, this is why I need to spew it out. There's a mask on and there's cellophane shrouding the front and before me. So I say, hello mate, are you being busy? And he sits there unassumedly and doesn't listen to a word I'm saying because, as I say, the mask and the cellophane combination is irrelevant in the circumstance because one could not doth hear what he is saying. I even went into Old English there, So I haven't even mentioned the pub yet. You don't even know where the story's going. But I like to paint this visual picture because everybody can associate to it as well, because if you've gone to the pub in the back of a cellophane taxi, you'll go, I know exactly what he's saying. Did that answer your question, or did I just do a politician's answer that just went round it?
That was a great answer, and it leads me nicely on to the next question, which brings me back to something that you mentioned earlier on about kind of the use of words and the great use of language that you use in there, even when you went into your Old English. How important is language to comedy, and how important is language to storytelling in general, would you say?
Oh, it's really important. I find when I'm telling jokes in England, to use the English language is really beneficial. When I'm in Spain, I'll try and do it in Spanish, but then I'll just revert back to English and then I laugh. So it's dead important.
I don't know what I've let myself in for here, Finn. This.
No, I'm only joking, of course. No, language is really important. I think great. As I say, as I've referred back to from the start, I don't want to sound like a broken record, but I think I've referred to the point that painting a really strong picture and language is to do that. I mean, if I was to write something, I'd always get a thesaurus out and see if I can make it that little bit more interesting. Like what have I said? I've said big. Is there any better word than big? What's that thesaurus? Colossal. Wonderful. Much bigger picture. You see, pun intended there. But no, I think language is extremely important, and I think also when I'm telling a story, if it's a personal exercise, so between me and one other person, I will always draw in the character that I see before me in you. So I will associate myself to you, and I will try and plug it so that you're my captive audience. So I need to tell a story that's on your level to your character. And I would mimic you and your reactions to the story to gauge where I can go next or how far I can go. And I think that's created by... So I've reverted away from is language important to a story and said body language as well, which is obviously a different interpretation of language altogether, is extremely vital in storytelling as well. Obviously not if you're writing a novel, because you can't see these characters in front of you, and body language is difficult to read from a non-existent character. But I do think all elements of language are vital, if that makes sense.
Makes perfect sense. And I imagine that's quite difficult when you're on stage delivering your your stand-up, if you've got body language that's different in a whole multitude of people, it's quite fairly easy at the moment. We're on Skype, we can see each other. You can read my body language, I can read yours.
Yeah.
But if you've got a room of 500 people and you've got different people reacting differently, how do you cope with that?
It's a little bit different when you're on stage in front of so many people, because you can't read the body language because the lights are so blinding in your face you can't even tell anyone's there, so you have nothing to go off really. But what I do find is that I'm more receptive to negative body language, as any comedian would probably tell you. So you can generally see if somebody's having a good time, and the one person who isn't is always the most fun for you and the least fun for them. So I don't really need to gauge it from them. It's less body language than it is reaction. It's a collective of body language is reaction to me. That's the way I look at it. So if you've got one person, you're reading their body language. If you've got 100 people, you're reading their reaction. So then that one person who's not enjoying themselves and 99 people who are, then it means it's just wonderful, because you now know that those 99 people who are enjoying themselves are going to enjoy themselves at this man or woman's expense as well.
So there's been a number of studies about comedians needing less social approval than kind of the average member of society. Mm-hmm. So that kind of ties into that. Have you found that that's been the case for you, that you find that you need less social approval?
100%, but it's not something that you want, because obviously you do want social approval in what we do, because laughter is what fuels us, and laughter is what excels our career. So you've got an artist who does one picture, sells that picture, the next picture's worth a little bit more. And it's the same context with a comedian. The more people that laugh, the more people that want you, and the more work that you get. But social approval is something that I've never required. I'm very much take me as I am. This is who I am. If you like me, that's wonderful. If you don't like me, I'm not going to change to make you like me. That's not who I am as a character. But with that, I think it's also something that it's not the way you are at the start. I think when you start out, you do need that social approval, because you need to be told that you're good to continue. But really, the best advice I ever got was off my dad. And my dad said to me, he said, son, because I used to always, it was not so much social approval, I always required his approval. And I always used to say, Dad, I'm doing really well. I've done 5 gigs now, and all 5 of them have been a roaring success. He says, yeah, let me stop you there, son. He says, that's all wonderful, and I'm really glad you're doing well, but you're not a real comedian until you go on that stage and you die on your arse. Apologies for my French. Unless you die on your arse. And then that's not all. You have to go and get out of bed the next day, go back on the stage in front of the exact same number of people and die again. And then once you've done that, if you can get back on that stage and do it again, then you're a comedian. And I hold that to me, and luckily I've done that. So I must now be a comedian, because I've died loads of times. No, it's only been a handful. But that's what it is. It's kind of, you can't require social approval, because when you do an amazing gig, you drive home and you're on top of the world. The adrenaline is the most amazing drug in the human body. I feel absolutely remarkable when I'm going home. But when I have a bad gig, there's no feeling that could compare. It's a bit like gambling. If you win loads of money, you feel great, but then you spend that money and it doesn't exist anymore. And if you lose a fortune, you can't afford to lose, and then you can't eat for months. It feels like it never goes away. It's a bit like that, but from a comedic perspective, you fuel off all the good ones. But when you have a bad ones, the good ones never existed.
So with that lack of need for that social approval, or that less need for social approval, how does that affect, do you think, getting the audience on your side in terms of developing that empathy and that connection between you and the audience?
I've always been a relatable guy. I wear my heart on my sleeve. I'm there, and once I'm there to tell jokes, I'm there for everybody to see, and I'm there for everybody to relate to, and everybody to give their time to. These wonderful people are paying money to come and see me, so I'm there to give them everything they need. So not even need, want, hopefully. Obviously, with a few restrictions. I mean, I'm only going to tell them jokes, nothing more, you know. But with that being said, I think I think empathy is something that people give you from the outset, regardless, until you've lost their interest. If you lose the interest, then that empathy is no longer there. That relatability is no longer there. No element of what you can do can rescue it once you've lost them. So you have to win them. And I think the best way to win them in the first instance is much like what I did there, although that was very gentle, what I said to you at the very start of this podcast. I could have been a lot less gentle, but I hadn't asked you a disclaimer on how one should speak, you know, whether one could use words of certain specific kinds of language that paint a very negative picture. But with that being said, I think if you bring that association and go straight for the people who are there, the people who everybody knows, and make a few jokes about them, but lighthearted, not something that's going to make someone cry and go home. That's not what you want. I'm not that guy. I'm not an aggressive comedian. I'm not particularly blue. I can be clean as a whistle if necessary. So a bit of positive association with people in the room, get them all going, get everybody interested, and see where we go from there. Because I think you've got them in once they know you're not just reading from a script and you're actually being yourself, you know.
Yeah, I think that's really interesting and really good advice about that kind of building that instant rapport and building that instant empathy. So within comedy, often misdirection is used to build curiosity and anticipation, and often that's used within storytelling as well. So is misdirection part of your style of comedy?
Yeah, I involve misdirection, but I also subconsciously add misdirection by missing key elements of the story out, so that when I come back to it, they go, "Oh well, of course that's hilarious because there was made no mention of what was previously there." Like, so for example, a joke that you would never assume the punchline. I'll give you. I was in the bank the other day, and there was two people in front of me in the queue. And a guy come in, he had a mask and a shotgun, and he robbed the bank. And as the cashier was handing the money across to the robber, she knocked the mask slightly askew off his face. So he corrected the mask, and he turned to the guy too in front of me, and he says, "Did you see my face?" He says, "I did, yeah." Bang, shoots him dead on the floor. Well, he goes to the guy, one in front of me. He says, "Did you see my face?" He says, "I did, yeah." Bang, shoots him dead on the floor. Well, by this point, Paul, I'm starting to get the hang of this. He says, "Did you see my face?" I says, "No, but my wife did." So the mere mention of my wife not being there meant that you had no idea that punchline was coming, but it still made sense, and I hope she's not listening. Love you, darling.
So what is it about misdirection, do you think, that works so well to build the curiosity and the anticipation?
I think misdirection's great because if you're leading someone one way and they get all comfortable going that way, don't they? So you're at a fork in the road and you don't have a map and you take the left and you're just tootling along driving, I'm happy, and you get 6 miles up the road and you realise you should have gone right. It creates that doesn't create curiosity. I think that story really didn't make sense of the statement I'm making, because if you go 6 miles the wrong way, you're going to have to go 6 miles back and then go the right way. So that'll create curiosity, not curiosity. I got the F and the C mixed up there, sorry. But no, but it is right though. I think if you go that way though, you will be seeing everything that is around you, and it'll make you nice and comfortable because you feel like you're going the right way. But then you go, "Oh, geez, I was meant to go the other way." So then that's the curiosity and normality that you've created going in that specific direction has just been U-turned on you, because the metaphor does make sense actually now I think about it, because if you were in a car you'd have to do a U-turn to go back and go the right way. So I think that's kind of the way that life is. I'm one of them for absurdist comedy. I flipping love it. I can't do it, but I do love it. It's just things that make absolutely no sense and have no direction at all sometimes, and then they bring you to this place of just sheer hilarity when they come in, and it's just completely not what you were expecting, you know. I love that. I do love that. I love being led the wrong way and jumping in with something completely random, because that's me in day-to-day life. but it's not me on stage so much.
So the kind of the opposite of misdirection can sometimes work really, really well as well, where you know the punchline really early on, and that kind of leads you on, and everyone's kind of laughing right at the beginning, and you know it's coming. And that I think Fawlty Towers does that really quite well sometimes, and then Fawlty Towers can do the misdirection really well as well. So why do you think knowing the punchline really early on works so well as well?
Because I think losing anticipation is exciting as well, isn't it? It's kind of like, even if that's the same as if someone tells you a joke and you can see the punchline from a mile away, you laugh at a point in the joke when no one else is laughing. That feels great to people, doesn't it? Because you're laughing away to yourself and everybody's going, what he's laughing at. What they don't realise is you're a mile ahead of them. And that you do get those kind of people as well, like who laugh at the most absurd times. And then that creates a laughter rippling through the room of other people who then aren't even laughing because of where the story's going. They're laughing because this person's laughing. And it's because laughter is a contagious thing. And that, regardless, if you can create a story that creates what would be a contagious laughter, that's a reward within itself. But you just need someone what gets it first, though. You can't just breed them every day.
And where between kind of the misdirection and the early punchline where people get it really early on, where would you say your comedy fits in there, or is it a mix?
You see, you know how I would describe myself, which seems like the most relevant statement for the purpose of this podcast, is I would call myself an old-fashioned storytelling comedian. That is me. I generally tell long-winded stories, but I also put a lot of punchlines in them. But I also particularly like jokes that don't have very strong punchlines, but you keep someone for ages, because that within itself is funny. So even if you're telling a really weak joke, but you're dragging it out for 5 minutes, and I'll do this. I've got a couple of them that I particularly use when I'm on stage, where I'll draw out 5 minutes of this joke and I'll get the punchline, and it's what you call a groaner. It makes people groan when you get the punchline. But throughout the joke, I'll be going, stay with us, this is a long one, right? So there was this guy starting a job as a zookeeper and blah, 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 and you just keep going on and on and on. But people start finding it funny because you're going on for so long. And then when the punchline comes, the punchline's not even funny to the joke, but they've laughed so much throughout the joke because I'm keeping them on tender hooks throughout of it, that it really works lovely as well.
Nice. I like that.
I think I told you that particular joke I'm referring to as well, once upon a time.
So I remember that one. So all of these stories that you tell on stage, how do you collect them? Do you make them up? Do you have a really good memory? Do you have a book of stories? How do you have them all in your collection?
So it's accumulative over years. So you start out with a weak set of stories, and then you get some strong ones, and you add them in. I write them, I adapt them, I change them over time. Some of them I don't change. Like there's a particular one. Well, this one my wife hates, and so does the general public nowadays. So I've taken it out. But it's a really, really long joke where loads of different things happen. There's about 10 punchlines, but one of the punchlines in it was I'd just been pulled over by the police, and there's an Alsatian dog in the back. And I punched the Alsatian dog. It was lucky that he was in the back there. And the policeman says, I was going to do you for speeding, but now I'm going to do you for animal cruelty as well. I says, you punch that dog if you'd known what he'd done. He says, what's he done? I says, he's just eaten my tax disc. But with that being said, times have changed. Tax discs don't exist anymore. So people don't find that funny when you're telling it to a 20-year-old who's never seen a tax disc in his life. So I believe adaptation over time is something that I do with everything. That one I couldn't adapt because he couldn't eat my tax receipt from the internet, could he? So it just don't work anymore. So it just goes to the curb. But so cumulatively, I've added loads and loads of stuff in there over the years, but I've got a good memory. That's me. With the acting side, the way I trained myself to act, because I'm self-taught in everything I do. I didn't go to drama school or anything like that, and I pride myself on that a little bit, and that's why I love when I get good jobs and things, and I'm like, I've really earned this because I've literally self-taught myself. Comedy, self-taught. Well, I say self-taught comedy. I think that's underselling my dad's participation in my comedy career, because obviously my dad was a comedian, so I've spent my entire life observing comedy. So, but I've learned from watching. But the acting, totally self-taught. But I love it, and I've had good feedback. Hopefully, people do enjoy it, and I get really good gratification from the fact that, I'm on the stage with these people from Lambda and from Rada, and who have had these wonderful. And I don't get me wrong, I'm jealous. I wish I'd had that kind of opportunity, but also I'm like, well, this is how I learned, by watching. And I've always been that guy who learns by watching people. And the same with remembering things. I've always remembered things. So the best way to say it is, when I read my kids' bedtime story every night, I'll only ever use the book twice. I use the book twice, and then after that, I know the book forever. So, like, if you want to know, we're going on a bear hunt, we're going to catch a big one. I'm not scared. I could do it all for you right now. They're like, so it's a good way of showing you that, yeah, like, memory's really, really strong, and hopefully that's my only tool I've got, so I don't lose it.
And so when you've got your story, you've collected the story, and you're working out how to kind of turn that into your joke and add your jokes in and kind of pepper it throughout, do you write that down in its entirety, kind of word for word?
So say, for example, a particular situation has befaced me, and I believe that it will be turned into a good joke, I will write the entire situation down. I'll bring it down a little further and crumble it down, and then I'll have to, like, it takes ages, because then I'll ring somebody and I'll say, I've just written this dead good joke, and pretend it took me no time at all, but actually I've been sat for ages breaking it down and making sure that it's funny. And I'll tell them it, and they go, that's rubbish, that, Finn, and then I have to start again and word it in a way that would be funny.
So you've spent all this time thinking about the situation, you've written it down, you've rewritten it, you've told it to a few people to practice, you've done your kind of your practice nights in the comedy cellar somewhere, you've then been on stage and you've delivered it for the first time, and then you've done your tour around the UK and you're delivering it for the millionth time that you've ever delivered it.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that on the millionth time it sounds like the first time you've ever delivered that story?
Because you've still got to have full faith in it. You have to have full faith in it. If you lose faith in it and you feel so this is what I'm saying. I'm mentioning jokes from the past that have been written out. That's it. I could have told that joke a million times and had a laugh, and then one time and it doesn't work and it doesn't gauge the audience. That's the one time it's played its part and it's done. So much like anything, stories have to be disposable. If they don't travel with the time, then they need to be reworked, and then if that doesn't work, then they get shelved and just end up being one for the memory bank. My dad was a wonderful example of that as well. Like my dad could tell the same joke over and over again, and no one would ever laugh any less. And I would hope that people would say the same thing about me when I'm gone as well. Like, no matter how many times I tell a joke, he's still funny telling it. But if they don't, they go, Finbar was good the first 10 times I saw him, but on the 11th, he was rubbish. That's the one they'll remember. They'll always remember the 11th. They never remember the 10. So it's really important to just stay fresh and keep the stories relevant, but also keep people's attention with them. And you've got to have that faith in yourself and the faith in the story that you're telling. Because if you don't believe in that story you're telling, then people will see straight to you and have no interest.
And so you've got all these stories that you've planned and prepared and practiced and told these many, many, many times. But then sometimes you might have someone heckle.
Yes.
Or you need to have that really quick-witted instant response.
Yeah.
How do you make sure that you're ready for that instant response?
I generally just go home and cry if someone shouts at me. I don't respond. I'm not quick with it. No, that's the thing. You have to gauge the people that you can see. So once you can see everybody, you've already drawn association with everybody, and you've already thought of the relevant things to say. So, for example, if there's the easy thing is a reference point of a guy who sat looking the other way from you with his head turned to you, talking to his pal, not listening to a word he's saying. Go home, mate. Do you watch the telly with your back to it? Like just easy, gentle things. But then with that, you can get I mirror people, as I said to you earlier. I mirror people, so the reaction that I would get from an audience is exactly the same level that I would give back to them, if not a little notch higher, just so they know, oh, I'm not going to mess with him again. But I think also it's a bit of a difficult question to answer, saying how do you create a heckle? How do you create a retort to a heckle from a storytelling perspective? Because the response to a heckle would be an instant story created in your head. So there's no structure, there's no nothing. You're literally thinking on your feet and going back with what you've got, and because you can't have regimented responses to hecklers. You can't write down, oh, if a heckler says this to me, then I'll say this to them, because that's absolutely irrelevant. You can't gauge what somebody's going to say. Unless someone shouts, yeah, big nose, you're ugly or something, then I'm all right. I've got that one covered because I'm big and ugly and I'm used to that one, But I think to say that there's any kind of structure to that kind of response, it literally can be the first thing that comes in your mind, and that might be rubbish, and the heckler might get one up on you, and then they're the fan favourite, But it's a risk you take.
So that's more about what you're seeing, what you're viewing, the connection that you have with them already,
and what you're hearing. Yeah, absolutely. You have to draw association from every single part of it, and then go for it. I'd love to, but the worst thing about me is I say my memory is the best thing about me, my best tool. But if you asked me to make reference to examples of heckles I've responded to, because by goodness, I've responded to a good few and had some. There was a particular gig that sticks out in my mind where I had this heckle from a group of ladies in the front row, and whatever I said to them got the biggest response ever. But I can't remember all of those off-the-cuff things that I say back to people. I remember all of my stories, but I can never remember that. I can only remember the reaction, I'm sure they'd had a couple of them special chocolate brownies, those ones anyway.
Amazing. So, as well as all of the stand-up and the acting and the voiceover and the dancing and everything else that we've discussed.
Dancing's a fabrication. I don't dance. Well, I get asked to dance, but then I do the box step, and that's as far as my reign will go.
So as well as the box step, you're also a sales director of an energy brokerage.
Yes, that's correct.
How does comedy help you in the business world?
Oh, it's absolutely tenfold. When I was initially went into the world of business, the reason I'm here is because I need stability. I've got 4 children. Well, I've got 3 children and a 4th on the way within a week or 2. So I need that stability, which is heartbreaking for me, because I watch all of my. But also at this time, it's been extremely helpful because I watch all of my friends who've taken that massive leap to become actors full time and comedians full time, and I've got loads of them who do it, and that was a huge leap. And now it's go work in Asda with all of what's going on in the world, which is extremely sad to see for me. But it works wonderfully in business, because from the very get-go, when I started in this industry, people were saying you need to get the answers to these questions, you need to say this, say that, and say the other. And I went, no, I don't. What are you talking about? I'm the unmanageable man. That's probably why I'm a sales director now, because I don't have to answer to anybody anymore. Except for the other people I have to answer to. So that was a bit of a silly statement. But So I said, no, I don't have to do it that way. I don't have to sound like a robot. I don't have to go, all right, so how many meters have we got? How many sites have we got? What is this? What's that? If I do that, the other person on the phone's going to hang up and say, I have no interest in talking to you. You're like 100 other people I've spoken to. So instantly I ring them up and I gauge them and I mirror their voices. If they're speaking in a high tone of voice, my voice goes a bit higher. If they're very loud, I'm very loud, which is very annoying for everybody who works around me. But then I will talk to them about life, love, laughter, lockdown, everything. And I'll create that rapport and, that relationship, because it's all about relationships. It's not about getting all the information you need in the first instance. It's about establishing a relationship, a connection. And then from that point, when you've got that built, then you can drop the questions in between going, oh, hello, Pat, how's the wife and kids? Because you're at that stage. Someone goes, hello, Pat, it's just Finn again. How are you doing? How's the wife and kids doing? Oh, they're great. By the way, Pat, I didn't ask you, how many sites did you have again? All right, grand, not a bother at all. We'll have a little look at that for you if you want. Or if not, then we'll just speak again next week and I'll bore the life out of you then. Just something like that. And it's really, really gentle, and people really respond to you if you're friendly and relatable. And that's the point of everything I've said.
Amazing.
I bet you weren't expecting answers this long from us.
The answers have been brilliant. I really, really appreciate it. However, I am aware of the time that I've taken from you today, and so I would love to ask you just a few quick-fire questions, if that's okay. So, who do you think of when you hear the word story, and why do you think of that person?
I mean, from an acting perspective, William Shakespeare, Samuel Beckett, and John Steinbeck, those three, and this is what we say, stories have to remain stable over time. And for them to have written their stories and for them to still be as prominent in modern day is absolutely baffling, stifling.
Can you recommend any good books, websites, blogs, podcasts about storytelling that you may have read or may have studied?
I don't study storytelling. I have to be perfectly honest. The only thing I see is of you guys doing your storytelling podcast. Other than that, as I say, it's just self-taught. Everything's self-taught from what I do, and that's it really. I don't have any more answer to give to that.
Okay. And finally, where can we find out more about you? Where's your website? And if you're on any social media, where can we find that?
This is a fun question because I'm 28 years old, but I also have the technological ability of my gran, who's 90. We'll call my gran Techno, but that's not because she's technologically advanced. It's just because she takes no prisoners. But you can find me on Facebook if you want to see loads of things that are completely irrelevant to me, and post very infrequently because I'm too busy etching all of my jokes into a bit of slate with a rock. But I'm Finbar Healy Comedy on there. And then also I have a website. I think I do, finbarhealy.co.uk. You want to see any of my jokes online, you won't, because I've got 4 hours worth of video footage of my jokes that I didn't know how to edit, and they're all sat on a laptop somewhere and haven't been edited, so nobody can see. So nobody can book me because they can't see me, because they'll go, he's probably rubbish because he won't put anything online. But one day when I get the editing capabilities, you will get to see me telling a joke on your screen on YouTube. That's what I aspire to, being a YouTube sensation with 400 views in the last 2 years. It'd be wonderful.
Brilliant, Finn. Listen, I really appreciate you spending the time with us today and sharing all of your knowledge and your experience with us.
Thank you very much for having me, Paul. I wish my knowledge came across a little bit more than my experience, but I've not really made any sense in anything I've said, so I'll just continue to talk nonsense until this call is signed off.
Well, I think you have. I appreciate that you've continued with the self-deprecation throughout, and we should definitely do this again sometime soon. So thanks again, and we'll catch up soon.
It's not just self-deprecation. My wife and kids hate me as well.
I'm sure that's not
Thanks
true.
Thanks so much.
And good luck with the incoming newborn.
Thank you ever so much, Paul. Take care.
Take care.
Thank you for joining us for this episode of Rule the World. Be sure to rate, review and subscribe to the show, and visit weareopusmedia.com for more resources based on today's topic. as well as access to more episodes that will help you develop your storytelling abilities. That's weareopusmedia.com. Thank you, and see you next time.